Rolling. Good evening. I welcome you to today's council meeting. Today is Monday, January 25th. I appreciate all of you for being here tonight. Please join me in standing for the invocation, which will be led by Councilmember.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for allowing us to live in the great country of America, the great state of Texas, and the great town of Sunnyvale. We ask for your guidance and wisdom tonight as we come together and discuss issues and concerns of the town. We ask that you bless us and help us through any decisions we have. We thank you again for your many blessings. Please give our nation health to overcome this COVID pandemic. Please bring peace to our country as we're very divided. In your heavenly name, amen.
Amen. Please join me standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Now time is 7:09. Let me call to order the regular town council meeting for Monday, January 25th. For the record, all council members are present, so we have a quorum. I also want to welcome our staff and our attorney for town attorney for being here tonight, and all our guests and visitors. First item is introduction of new employees. We got two police officers. I'm going to invite Chief to come forward to introduce Luis Corona and Ramiro Ayala.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Can I get Officer Corona and Ayala, please?
He can come.
Bring him up.
Bring him up. Bring him up.
Yes, we do. All right, these are our two newest police officers. Officer Luis Corona comes to us from Dallas County College Police Department. He has approximately 1.5 years experience in patrol and is a current member of the Army National Guard, where he serves as a sergeant. Officer Corona served active duty as a paratrooper in the famed 82nd Airborne Division of the United States Army. Officer Ramiro Ayala comes to us from the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police Department with just under 5 years of experience. With DART, Officer Ayala was assigned to a special anti-terrorism task force. Officer Ayala is a certified field training officer and has additional training in community policing. Please help me welcome them to Sunnyvale.
Next item is announcement. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.0415, Mayor, Council, and staff members may report on various different items listed on the agenda. Council, are there any announcements? Staff, are there any announcements?
Okay, we just wanted to remind everyone to mark your calendars for the upcoming trash off, which is March 27th. Yeah, so if we could just remind, and we do have an alternate rain out date, so go ahead and get your items together, because one way or the other, we're going to try to have this event this year.
So trash off on March 27th. Sorry, March 27th. Anything else? Okay, moving on to the next item, that's a public forum. The town, so at this time you may come forward, members of the audience may come forward and speak to the council on any matters other than legal or personal matters or matters listed on the agenda. If you'd like to come forward to the chamber, please come forward. If you're calling in via Zoom, please raise your hand. No one is coming forward. Erica, anyone raising their hand?
No hands raised.
No hands raised. We're going to close the public forum. Moving on to recognition portion of the agenda. I want to invite Chief Kendrick to come forward to recognize Sunnyvale firefighters for their actions and outstanding efforts that led to life-saving CPR. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's always a pleasure and honor to come before you all and introduce you to some firefighters that they all do an excellent job, and this particular evening was another one for the books. So at this time, I'd like for Captain Y'all and Firefighter Bynum and Firefighter Hernandez, please come up here. So what we're always proud of is the success that we're able to accomplish with the support of everyone in the town of Sunnyvale and the council. November 17th, 2020, the fire department received a 911 call of an unconscious 61-year-old male not breathing. The patient was assessed and advanced life protocols were given to the patient, including our new device, which is called the Lucas device, which I'll explain here in a minute. The Lucas device for manual CPR, which was able to give the firefighters, the crew, freedom to, it's an automatic pump for CPR. And so that freed up the other crew members to start other life-saving techniques for this patient. The crew assisted in other advanced medical procedures, and during the advanced procedures, the patient regained a pulse. Still critical is transport to the hospital. We have learned that the 1st of January, this patient actually walked out of the hospital with a internal defibrillator. So it's a great job that these guys did as we all trained to do, and it just so happens they pulled that straw for that evening. The Lucas device is one thing that I wanted to mention to y'all. I know y'all heard of the CARES funding and things like that. Well, there's a lot of things that we were able to accomplish with the CARES funding, and one of those was 2 of the Lucas devices that we have, one on each ambulance. And as I mentioned, it's a device that can actually be set on a patient, set and actually gives him the patient manual CPR while it frees up crew members to do the other things like intubations and drugs and things like that they need to attend to. So it was something that we took advantage of, and with the CARES funding, along with some other supplies we got, and to have this story told is a unique one, because there's always good things that come in. So we're awful proud of that. So I just wanted to take y'all's time, and I appreciate it, because these guys are on duty, and I'm sure they're ready to go back to whatever they do. So So we wanted to give them in recognition of the life-saving measures on 13 November 2020. Is presented the Sunnyvale Life Safety Award. Fire Department has presented this certificate of appreciation and professionalism. And it's signed by the mayor and the town manager. And we certainly appreciate all of that. So here's your Sunnyvale firefighters, and we certainly appreciate their time. So firefighter Vinyl. Captain. And firefighter Nancy. So we really appreciate the support that we get, and these guys, all of the firefighters do a great job, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. All-star crew. Oh.
We got one more recognition of the finance department for receiving the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for the third consecutive year. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Town Manager, Ms. Guthrie?
Yes, sir. I would like to share a letter with you, if I may, or at least portions of it. This is from the director of the Government Finance Officers Association, and it says, "Dear Mayor George, we are pleased to notify you that your comprehensive and annual financial report for fiscal year ended September 30th, 2019 qualifies for GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by our government and its management." And we draw this to your attention because our staff really does a great job, and we're really proud of this achievement. And so we have all three of that team here tonight. We have Liz, we have Phyllis, and Gretchen, and we're hoping that we can get a great photograph of you all with them, just to kind of mark this occasion and thank them for all of their hard work and what they do to make sure that we really have a professional financial department.
You know, I want to note that this is how many years in a row now? Let's 3 years in a row. This is a great accomplishment by itself. But think about 3 years in a row, the same team, Phyllis, Hopkins, and Richard are getting this award. Thank you, and congratulations. Great job.
Got this. Tom Brady of finance. And knock on wood. I'll be fine. So
where's Erica? Great job, ladies.
It's easy. What, you want to push yourself?
Hey, hey. Okay, council, we have one item on the consent agenda, item number 5. Consider an approval of minutes for the regular meeting of the town council for January 11, 2021. Would anyone like to discuss this item? Okay, if not, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda item 5?
Motion approved. Second.
Motion made by Eldred and second by Mr. Freeman to approve consent agenda item 5 as presented. All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 6, discuss, consider, and act upon matters discussed in the work session regarding DMAIC analysis of the town of Sunnyvale's street maintenance needs based upon current conditions and funding availability. Susan, I was going to just say that it was a great job and a great package put together by staff. And every one of you have hands in this one. Very detailed, very the DMAIC format, right? Data-driven, very methodical. So great job with that. Appreciate that one. So council, last we discussed, take a look at it and let staff know your priorities, and we'll get back together one more session prior to our budget planning. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Okay. Moving on to item number 7. Discuss, consider, and act upon the second reading of Ordinance 21-01 and Ordinance amending Ordinance 20-23, which made appropriation for the support of the town of Sunnyvale for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30, 2021, amending the annual budget of the town of Sunnyvale for the 2021 fiscal year. Ms. Hopkins?
I'm going to be taking that.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading of Ordinance 21-01, which was to amend the current year budget by rolling forward the remaining balances of those lapsed appropriations from the 2019-2020 budget year. There's detail in your packet, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, council, I'm going to open up for public comments. If there's anyone from the members of the audience who would like to come forward and speak to the council on item number 6, please come forward. If you are joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the members of the audience. Erica, anyone raising their hands?
No hands raised.
No hands raised. We're going to close the public comments. Council, are there any discussions or questions on item number 6? Okay, do you have one? If there are none, I call for a motion. Motion made by Mr. Early. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Finch to approve item number 6 as presented.
Number 7.
Item number 7. Thank you. Everyone heard the motion? All in favor signify. All opposed? Motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 8, discuss, consider, and act upon Ordinance 21-02 and Ordinance ordering a general election to be held in the town at the next uniform election date on the first day of May 2021 for the purpose of electing a mayor and town council places 5 and 6, designating the date for a runoff election if needed, designating the place at which said election is to be held, making provisions for the conduct of that election, and other provisions incident and related to the purpose of this ordinance. That be Ms. Rachel?
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, as you know, each year the town council is required to order your general election. This year's election is going to be on Saturday, May the 1st of 2021, and your early voting will be held April the 19th through April the 27th. Our town charter provides that in order to be elected, a candidate must receive more than 50% of the votes cast. If a candidate fails to receive more than 50% of the votes cast, the town must hold a runoff election. If that occurs, then we'll bring another ordinance to you to order that election. If that's necessary, the runoff election would occur on June the 5th of 2021. The attached ordinance orders the 2021 general election and runoff election if necessary. Staff anticipates the contract with Dallas County Elections Department will be ready for council to review sometime by the end of March. I've reached out to Dallas County to make sure that they're still going to be holding early voting here, and it's my impression that they will be. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. I can open up for public comments. If anyone from the members of the audience would like to come forward and speak to the council, you may come forward. If you're joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the members of the audience. Erica, anyone raising their hands?
No hands raised.
No hands raised. I'm going to close the public comments. Council, are there any questions or discussions on item number 8? If there are none, I call for a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Eldred, second by Mr. Clark to approve item number 8 as presented. Everyone heard the motion? Any additional discussions? There are none. All in favor signify. All opposed. Motion passed 7-0. Moving on to item number 9, discuss, consider, and act upon approving resolution 21-05, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale, Texas, awarding an architectural contract for design services for the Sunnyvale Fire Department and horsebarn projects to Komatsu Architecture and authorize the town manager to execute the contract. Ms. Guthrie, good evening.
Thank you, sir. If you recall, at our last meeting, we had an in-depth update on the status of the fire department and the horse barn projects. We went over what the architecture is going to look like. We went over the floor plan and the whole history of the project. But if you recall, the project started on February 25th, 2019, at a recommendation of the CIP committee. On the March 23rd and May 11th of 2020, the council voted unanimously to issue COs for the construction of the new fire station. Then on May 26th, you heard a presentation that walked through potential sites. On July 13th, council heard from Komatsu on the 2 sites, Glacier and Jobson. On August 24th, you heard from the architect and the response time expert. And at that point, you narrowed it down and voted to place the new station at the Glacier site. Then on October 12th, you voted to combine the fire station and horse barn projects into one project and to hire a construction manager at risk. And just as a note, that RFP is out and active right now, and we're getting responses coming in for that. And then on January 11th, you heard a very in-depth update on the project. And now tonight, you are actually awarding the contract to Komatsu for the full design of both of those projects. If you recall, in the original RFQ we did for preliminary design of the fire station, it allowed for us to continue with the same architect into phase 2, which is now the design of the project. So I have before you in your packet a copy of the contract, which has been reviewed by legal, and a resolution authorizing me to sign that contract. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to call for public comments. If anyone from the members of the audience would like to come forward and speak to the council, you may do so at this time. If you're joining us via Zoom, you may raise your hand. No one is coming forward from the chamber. Erica, anyone raising their hands?
No hands raised.
No hands raised. We're going to close the public comments. Council, are there any questions or discussions on item number 9? Mr. Finch?
Question, Susan. I see it in the attachment on the compensation schedule, page 56 of 70 or 27 of 41, I'm not sure which is right,
Okay.
that we're paying a fee based on a budget, based on a predisposed budgeted amount for the equestrian center of 890,000. Is that, am I reading that correct? That we're paying a percentage of that budget to them for this design?
We will, in the end, pay the percentage, which is 9% of whatever the project ends up being. So these are estimates of what the project could be, and it's based upon the presentation that we gave last meeting. But in the end, it's 9% of whatever the project is. So if the project goes up, that fee goes up. If the project cost goes down, the fee goes down. And it's particularly important because if you remember on the fire station, we talked about a couple of different square footage models based upon our budget. So in the end, it's based upon what we spend on the project.
So strictly math-wise, 890, if it's 9%, that means the project is $9.88889 million. Is it that high? I thought we didn't have that much money.
No, Mayor, I think it's 9% of 890.
Yeah.
It'd be 9% of 890,000. 890,000 was the proposed budget. It'd be 9%,
look like
right?
80 grand.
Is that right, Susan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What's
So-
890 again?
890 is the proposed budget for the equestrian center. It'd be 9%. Their fee would be 9% of what we're saying now is 890. It'd be 9% of whatever it ends up costing.
Right. And so right now we have a lot of, as we discussed last meeting, we have a lot of questions about the cost of that project. We may end up going with an open air barn. We might end up doing a package or a kit. So right now we only have $500,000 budgeted. So we're only going to spend what we can spend or raise money for. And so at the end, we'll have to make a decision about how we move forward with that.
And I'm just curious about this $59,912. That's their total AE fees. How is that arrived at for that facility? How are we arriving at basically $60,000? Is that like I might have missed it somewhere in the document, but it looks like we're authorizing basically $60,000 in fees for that project right now. Am I reading that right?
That's what their estimate was. And that kind of comes into the play between what I'm saying is our budget versus they're saying in the end, if you end up spending the 890, it's 9% of the 890.
Okay. So this is just okay, I got you. I think I'm tracking.
So you're
Charlie's
authorizing
on?
9%.
Oh, Charlie's on the line too. Thank you. Charlie, chime in.
Good evening, Charlie.
Is he there?
Charlie, would you mind unmuting yourself before you speak? We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I just want to clarify, the 890 is the total project budget at this point. That includes the 51,912 for the A&E fees. So that's not 9% of the 890. It's actually 9% of 741,600 plus some contingency numbers. If it's an owner change, we would get paid 9% of those changes to design them. If it's a construction change, we would not get paid to design those changes. So, but Susan is correct. Whatever the final construction cost is, our fee, we're proposing 9% of the final construction, but currently it's 9% of 741, which is where you see the 51,900, which was on the spreadsheet that we presented last time at the meeting, sir.
I could do that, Mr. Hughes.
Yes. Clarify, when is the collection? Is it at the end of the project or along the way, once it's approved by us? I'm just curious how that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, sir.
Sorry about that. When's the collection of fees? Do you collect fees at the beginning, middle, or end?
No, sir. We will invoice on a percentage basis of completion, and we're looking at about a 18-month duration for the total project, about 6 months of design and about 12 months of construction. So we will break that out in a percentage, roughly 12 payments during construction for construction administration, and then 6 payments for the design fee. So it's billed as we progress.
Thank you, Mr. Kearney. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there additional questions for staff or the consultant? Mr. Allen?
Mayor, staff, council, I generally don't have a problem with this. However, I asked the question sometime in the last year, probably before the pandemic, what is our rules for this equestrian center? Is this going to be a town ran, town owned, and who's going to be in there? I was pretty clear that I thought we need to have those guidelines at least drafted before we start building the facility. I stand by that. And if we want to spend the money to get the design, then I'll support that. But when we start talking about spending money on something that we don't have a guideline for, I don't think I can support that, Mayor. So that's where I am personally, building a $1 million facility where we don't know if it's going to be our citizens or somebody else or how we're going to manage that. Does not seem like good business to me. So I wanted the council and the staff to know where I am on that, and that I would not be able to support continuing the project if we don't have some sort of management guidelines, at least drafted in place before we vote on that.
I think that's fair. The additional questions or comments?
Mayor, I just want to
Seeger?
echo what Mr. Allen said. I've said all along, you know, we can go to design phase and it can be a mutual type project because it is all going to be on the same piece of property. So I think there needs to be some synergy between the two properties, but I think we also really need to look at, for the number of horses that are going to be in there, how self-sufficient is it going to be? Yeah, we may need to put some money into it, but that again plays into what Member Allen talked about. There's no guidelines. We have nothing right now. And we're going to go out and spend the money to do it for what I think is going to be a very small number of citizens. There are stables all around here. If they're not profitable, then how are we going to put red money into it to make it good for our citizens or for the few citizens that use it? I'm not a horse guy. That's not the reason why I'm saying this. I'm just trying to look at what is best use of the money of the town for the whole of the citizens, not a few citizens.
Mayor, I do want to comment that we haven't ignored, it's on the project list, and Burton has gone and met with some other stables. So we have begun that process. If I might suggest, it might be beneficial to maybe have a subcommittee of council to work with staff on this, because I got to tell you that we have kind of contradictory feelings about this. You know, on one hand, we're hearing it needs to be self-sustaining. I mean, it is in terms of the operations. We don't do anything for operations, but we talked about a sinking fund for ongoing maintenance of the facility once it's built. But, you know, I think, you know, the idea of, is this for town citizens use, or is this, we want the horses that are there to stay there? That's kind of been a little contradictory for us, because most of us have been told, hey, the horses that are there are the ones we want to stay there to, you know, some degree or another. So that may or may not feed into some priority for town citizens. So in terms of, you know, we can come up with some rules, but I think the direction and the policy decision about what you want for this is something I think we need some input on. You know, I think we've been almost approaching it as this is public art, that people want these horses there because it lends to the brand and the feel and the country feeling of Sunnyvale, and is not really about the use or you know, who gets to use it, just as long as those horses are there for everybody to get to look at. And so, you know, staff has kind of looked at it in that way. So if we want to go in a different policy direction, I do think some input from council would be helpful to us in drafting rules.
Susan, I agree with you. I've been in this council for a few years, and all along what I heard from many citizens, not 100% citizens, is that they consider that location as a key portion of Sunnyvale, and they enjoy watching, whether they have horses or not, maintaining horses there. That's some people may describe that area is what defines Sunnyvale as Sunnyvale. Whether any, I'm sure there's, for any projects in the town, there's going to be some number of people opposed, some people supporting of it. I think all along we have, in my opinion, given the impression that we will support this project and we'll move forward. But Mr. Allen's point is clear that I don't think we have defined clearly and agreed upon the ownership and maintenance cost that I want to be done. Even though prior councils, I'm talking about a few years back, have indicated that's the way they want to run it. Again, every council get to make their own decisions and rules can change. So I agree with my understanding is, again, this is the intent was never to make profit. It was break even at best, maybe even loss. And that may not sit well with some people, because for them, why should I take on a project which loses money? It's a very valid question, but at least for a number of citizens in town, having horses there and a horse barn is key, very important. I'm not disagreeing with any of my council colleagues, and I had this discussion with many of you, and I heard all different sides. And Mr. Egan sent me a note last week, when we have private horse barns in town, why public? And a very valid question. And again, I know Mr. Allen, Mr. Finch, and every one of you talked to. So I think it's good to define what the next step, who owns the maintenance and cost. But I think we made, at least previous councils and even this council, my opinion, has made commitments, whether it's the agreement in a decision or not, that we gave the impression that we'll maintain the horse structure, horse property there. With that, I know Mr. Allen, you want to speak. I just want to make sure that I talk about a bit of history, the impression many of us are still left with the citizens. We just want to share that for your consideration. But again, I will yield to the majority here. But Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to be clear that I think my concern is deeper than whether we're going to do the barn or not. That's not my opposition. My opposition is not the money. How we're going to do it without a plan is a concern. And I believe that if we're going to spend $1 million, and until very recently, we never got close to that number, and 890 is $1 million. And I think the town needs to, if our town residents want their horses there, we need a plan. Is that what we're going to do or not? Or are we going to spend $1 million of town money on a horse facility, but them not having any input into it? So I would just like to have that clearly defined. And if the town has that clearly defined and we're good with it as a council, then I'm okay with that. My opposition is spending more than what this started out to be a couple of years ago, and then still not having a base guideline. And Susan, I appreciate you working on it, and I know that, but I'd like to see that before we vote on something. I mean, you probably wouldn't like to spend $1 million without knowing how we're going to do the project in any corporation. So that's my concern. It's not whether we have the horses or not. It's not any of that. It's how we're going to manage it and whose horses are going to be there. Will the residents get the first shot at it, or that we're going to spend $1 million of the residents' money, but we're not going to give you a shot at it. And I don't think that's representing our citizens very well. So that's my input, and how we get there and what we come up with is okay with me. I'm not putting anything down. I just would like to have something on paper before we spend the money. That's all I'm saying.
Understood, Mr. Finch. Mr. Adam, thank you. Mr. Finch.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments and I appreciate the comments of fellow councilman, but while previous councils may have given the impression about what they want to do, no council until this one has been challenged with funding that project. And so there's a difference between having an idea of what we want it to be and then coming up with the funds to actually fund that idea. And so that's the struggle, is not that we don't have want to have a nice place where people can observe these things. It's now we're faced with the funding question that, we just left a meeting where we have millions of dollars worth of road work that needs to be done. And now we're being asked to look at an $800 million project. And so I think that's the struggle, is trying to find the balance between keeping Sunnyvale and the priorities of funding. And so while I appreciate previous council's desire to keep something like this, no council until this one has been faced with how we're actually getting funded.
So Susan, you can correct me. This is to award the architectural contract for design studies to the Sunnyvale Fire Department and the horse barn, not just for the horse barn.
Correct, it's a joint project.
And we have approved a certificate of obligation for $5.4 million,
5.6.
$5.6 million. I'm trying to do the math in my mind.
Yeah, the fire station is approved at 5.6 million. We have $500,000 currently budgeted for a horse barn. And honestly, the original estimate was much, much higher than that because it was the entire master plan. And if you recall, we chose not to move forward with the master plan due to costs. But we all agreed, or I'm sorry, I thought we all agreed that we needed to move forward with the barn. I think right now, because we don't have the construction manager at risk on board, those barn costs are a little bit fluid right now because we don't know what it's going to cost. And so we've issued this RFP for the construction manager at risk to really come in. This is not something we're used to building. So we're trying to determine, hey, how can we save money? If it's way above our budget, we're going to have to make a choice. Do we do an open air pole barn, or we do, something that's nicer? And I think those are the decisions we're going to have to make. Do we want to put a little bit more money in, or do we want to keep at the $500,000 budget? And what can we do for that amount? But I think, it was my opinion that we really couldn't do nothing and leave the horses there in the current conditions indefinitely. Was our thought that we needed to do something.
Yes, Mr. Egan.
And I don't want my comments to be misinterpreted as that people haven't been doing what needs to be done. Susan, I totally agree. I think the bottom line of all this, I don't think we found the answer yet.
No.
I don't think we've thought out of the box well enough. And we don't have enough data at this time. I think, again, what Mr. Allen and Mr. Finch were saying are very true statements, but we don't have anything concrete here to be grasping with. And I understand it's difficult to come up with it, but at some point we got to be able to put together some kind of fictitious balance sheet that makes some sense relative to nearby stables, including one in Garland that's right over off of not Bobtown, but the other one. Are they somewhat self-sufficient? Maybe we do have to put the money into it. And I'm not saying we don't put some amount of money into it to be able to have a facility there, because I also agree. I remember when I used to take my girls to school and I drove down Trip Road and went past where all those horses were out there in the pasture. I totally understand all that, but there is a cost associated with all of that. And I don't think that we've come down to say, this is going to cost every citizen $5 a year or whatever it might be against their taxes. And I think that's how you begin to wake people up to say, well, I just don't think we've gone through this enough. And I think what we're talking about here right now doesn't say whether or not we vote for or against this. I don't think anybody's got a problem with this. I think what we're doing is we're telling you, hey, there needs to be more behind this when we start getting down to looking at how much we're going to spend on pursuing whatever facility that we end up putting in there for horses.
And Mayor, let me throw one thing in. I think there is one thing that is absolutely clear, and that's what's there now is not a permanent solution. And if we can't come up with a solution with what we've got, that still doesn't work. I don't think it's right for the horses. I think it's hazardous. We kind of put off talking about it because we're trying to come up with something better. But at the end of the day, what is there now does not work, because again, it's hazardous. It's about to fall over. But I think that much we could all agree on. What's there now is not going to work going forward.
So, Ms. Guthrie, again, maybe 890s, maybe is the question, right? So we have a budget-wise, we have $5.6 million for the fire department, and we have 500,000 commitment from 4B for the bond. That is $6.1 million. And what I heard is whatever the cost, the 9% of the cost will be architecture.
That's correct. And we would keep the funding streams for these projects very separate because through the CO that will pay for the fire station cannot overlap and pay for the barn. And so it's pretty separate. And no one, I guess, we are going to use the construction manager at risk to help us determine what is a way that we come as close to our budget as possible. And if we can't meet that budget, then I'll need to come back to you guys. And at that point, we'll need to make a decision. Do we continue on or do we not? You know, and it might be that we find another funding stream. You know, there are many different funding streams for this project, and we, you know, it could be through 4B, it could be through other funds that you all have at your discretionary disposal. It could be, you know, some other form. But from an operations cost, the way that our relationship with the leasing works right now is we have no costs that we do for them. So when we fund this barn, yes, we'll have that expense. But at that point, we're leasing this property out to a business and they manage all of the expenses. We don't have any operating expenses whatsoever. That being said, I would recommend that we take the money that we receive from them and use it to fund an ongoing CIP type maintenance. You know, I think they're going to have to keep up the routine maintenance, but to protect our investment, I would recommend we use that money, and I use the word sinking fund, to fund that, to make sure that we always can replace the roof or the AC or the major components. So right now, that's the way it works. We have no say in the operating procedures. Who has horses there? Are many of the people have had horses there for years. So if we're going to now change that lease agreement to us have some provisions to what we want from their operation, that's the piece I feel like Councilmember Allen is asking for, that I think we need some direction on what it is. I mean, the financial piece is very clear to me. The piece about us giving them input into their operations, I think we could really benefit from some just ongoing discussions with council members about what it is they want to see with that, because right now we don't have that nailed down.
So let me ask you, Mr. Allen. So we have an agenda item, right? This is to approve 9% of the total cost. Again, my math shows 5.6 plus 500 is 6.1 times 9% is 549,000. Very different than 890, but that's here or there, right?
I think the 890 was not the total cost together. I think the 890 was something that Councilmember Finch picked up off of the horse barn as an estimate of the project cost.
The basic service architectural engineering fee will be approximately 9% of the total budget. So, okay, so our cost is, what are we authorizing them?
9%. We're authorizing 9% of whatever the total project cost
Is that roughly for, as of this document, 59,912?
I think it's just 9%. Right now, we don't know what the total project cost of the barn is. I mean, I think.
So let me ask you the math wise. 5.6 is the fire station, 0.5 is the barn, which adds up to 6.1. If those numbers hold up and we apply the 9% of 6.1 million is 549,000. Is that, am I doing the math correctly?
Yes, you are. And it's there's two documents, one for the barn, one for the fire station. We're trying to keep everything separate because the funding streams are separate. If that makes sense.
It's not $1 million as I thought initially also, but so would it be, since there's a question here on finance, that's what we are proving. Does the council want to, again, I would say go back to if you need to get those details, either work with the subcommittee, that's one option, to develop this guidelines and policy, or go back to the Glacier Track Committee and get their inputs. Those are the two options I can think of. But I'm open to ideas.
Yeah, Mayor, I have no problems approving our design criteria today. We need that probably to make the next step. My comment is simply before I personally make a vote on a budget item, I'd like to know how we're going to use that budget item. That's all my comment is. It's not to delay this vote or to delay the architect, we need that to move forward. But past that, my belief is, and that of many citizens, is we need to know what we're going to do with that before we do it. And that's the only thing I'm making a comment to. Sir.
Mayor Charlie's raising his hand again.
Good evening, Charlie, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that the construction amount that we are basing the 9% on currently for the fire station is 4.8 million, and the horse facility at, let me go back to the other slide here. At, sorry, I'm going back and forth. Currently, I'm showing it at 720,000 for the horse facility. So it's, I just want to clarify, we're talking a little over 9 million, but once again, it's not 9% of the total project cost. It's 9% of the actual construction cost, and that is adjusted at the end of the project for actual cost. So just want to clarify that.
Yeah, Mayor, did you hear that? That we were taking the total cost of the project, which includes his fee. So we have to back out his fee and some of the other preliminary fees. So the actual construction would, but the percentage holds true because it just depends on how many square feet we end up doing and what we pay cost per square foot. So in the end, it's 9%.
Gotcha. So it could be even less than.
But the way you were calculating it was correct.
So I think it's going to be less than what I calculated.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm hearing is council is good to move forward with the award of the design, but there will be an action out of this one for either council to either create a subcommittee to develop that policy, which may include or may not include the Glacier Park Committee, and go with that. Is that what I'm hearing? Or is there any other? I just want to make sure I understood the direction council is giving.
I'll jump in and
Shepard?
say, I agree. I think we need a plan. I'm now on the Glacier Track Committee, and we've been focusing on design, but we haven't talked about plan. At least when I've been previously, we talked about plans. I think I agree with Councilmember Allen. It's definitely a plan to know how we're doing what we're doing. And that's something that we can all agree with. Do Sunnyvale residents get priority? How is it going to be maintained? How are we're going to have a competitive bid on who gets to lease that property? So I think we need a plan. So whether that's the Glacier Track Committee or if we do something with Town Council, definitely agree with that.
Okay. So you want the Glacier Track Committee to be part of the discussion?
What was their original charter? Do you know?
I don't think at the time that they were put together that we were doing charters or subcommittees. I know that I think a lot of my thoughts that we wanted those forces to stay, which would be that relationship, probably comes from that. I can tell you the consultant architect probably leaned the other direction of more of a very competitive situation. But I think that it was really, my impression from that committee was we really wanted those horses. There's the couple of blind horses. There's horses that have been there for years. And so I think that that's where my thought that, it really was about keeping the current system in place, but changing where they're housed. But I think we need to revisit that if there's feelings that that's not what the council wants. So.
Mr. Finch?
So, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments, Susan, but I think this goes back to the point of not having a longer term strategic plan because horses die and we're looking at a very finite time, making a large investment for a finite time for a specific amount. That's why I think we look further down the road for a strategic plan. I think that's kind of what we're looking for is what is our strategic plan as a town? Is it to have a place where people can just look at horses and view them and we don't worry about the cost associated with maintenance, or we go into a more competitive route? And I think that's some of the things we're missing is really what's our strategic plan long-term for this property? And maybe long-term is 5 years, maybe it's 10 years. But I think that's what we're missing. Councilmember Clark said that the committee is focused on design, and that's great. That's the first step, but we're still getting to the point where we're spending, close to $1 million on a facility that we don't have a long-term strategic plan for. And I think that's where we get into trouble. I think, when we buy property and we don't have longer-term strategic plans about what our purpose is for the property, and we're dumping money into it. I think that's the problem. It's irresponsible to our taxpayers. And I think that's what we're all struggling with is this longer term strategic plan. We were trying to increment it by here's the cost, but okay, here's the cost, but what's our long-term strategic plan with this facility? And I don't think anybody's saying we don't necessarily want it. We just want to know the plan. And if it's up to us to figure out what that plan is, then Mayor, we will have to do a subcommittee and we'll have to work through what that looks like.
I think that's a very reasonable approach. So Susan, do we make a motion to, with respect to this contract award, and come back with an action, or action is going to be part of the motion? What is the right, what's the right approach here?
And so, Mr. Mayor, we're not spending any money yet based on, well, we're authorizing them to come forward with a plan. So there may be with a design, but we have to do that because the fire station's included in this. So I think it's okay to move forward with the design. Give us some, because I think part of their scope, and Charlie, if you can kick in here, I think part of your scope would be to come back with some value designs, right? And so we're not just talking about one design. So they'll come back with us, here are several options, and maybe we get that $500,000 design and we can move forward with it. So that's why I don't personally have a problem with us approving this, because it is a value kind of engineering process that has to happen, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I was trying to address the idea of the subcommittee. So what I was going to say was you could make a motion to approve this contract and agreement as presented, but also form a subcommittee of the council to work with the town manager and parks director and staff on what you guys would view as I'm hearing strategic plan and also policies, so we could kind of attack both of those together.
Okay.
And I think also we have our retreat coming up. We could also talk about vision during that retreat of, what you guys see as your vision for this operation.
So we can draft some charter for the subcommittee also, right? What is it they should come back with? Council, do you want Glacier Committee to be part of the discussion, part of that planning, or that you would just want the council?
Maybe we have them come tell us to present to the subcommittee what their idea is, instead of, because I don't know how many people are on this committee now, and Councilmember Clark, I'll defer to you on that, but my thought is to have some kind of,
Let's have them take the first shot. Let's have that committee take the first shot and provide something, then we can discuss it.
All right, so I think the motion is going to be, if you approve it, I think the motion is going to be something like, make a motion to approve item number 9 and form a subcommittee to work with the staff to develop strategic plan and policies for the Horse One project. That's captured mostly, Susan?
If that's what you want, I just heard Councilmember Clark say, have the current Glacier Committee come up with some recommendations and bring them back to the council. So, it
Is
could
that
go
what you said,
either
or you
way.
said that let that subcommittee give an input to the subcommittee?
I would say, let's do this efficiently. I would suggest Glacier Track takes the first shot at it. Whether we want to form a committee right now, or we want to wait till it comes back to us and maybe address it then. We also have the strategic meeting coming up, so we can also maybe have it as a bullet point there, not have to form an extra committee. I'm just concerned about forming too many committees.
Mayor,
My suggestion.
Mayor, I think we can approve this motion without having other stuff attached to it, but just with the understanding that we're going to address it as Councilman Clark mentioned. I don't think we need to mess up the motion to this. We can approve this motion if we so desire, and then knowing that that's what we're going to do is come back with another.
Mr. Freeman, do you have a comment, sir? Yeah. All right.
I just want to say, I thought what Kevin said was a great idea. Let's let Glacier do that, and then we'll come back and discuss it after that without an additional committee.
I like that idea, including the music area. Okay, so with that, can I have a motion with respect to item number 9, please? Second. Motion made by Mr. Eldridge, second by Mr. Finch to approve item number 9 as presented. Are there additional discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Thanks, council. Thanks for the input. Item number 10, Mayor and Council request for future staff updates and agenda items. Council? Okay, there are none. I call for a motion to recess into executive session to pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D of the Texas Government Code. Item number 11, Section 551(072), deliberations about real property, various parcels, town-owned land on SISD campus. Item number 12, Section 551.087, Economic Development Project AC.
Second.
Motion made by Eldred, second by Allen to recess into executive session. All in favor signify. All opposed. Motion passed 7-0. Time is 8:09. We are in executive session. Thanks. (8:31). We are back in the regular session. Council, are there any motion as a result of the executive session?
Mr. Mayor, two motions, or can I do this in one motion, or do I have to do two separate motions?
One at a time.
One at a time, two separate, okay. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 21-04, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale, Texas, authorizing the town manager to execute a non-binding letter of intent between the Town of Sunnyvale and JLL on behalf of N&H Plumbing Services LLC for the purchase of real property in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Okay, Council, you heard the motion?
Second.
Are there any second motion made by Pink, second by Clark? Are there any discussions on this motion? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Council on the second motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 21-06, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Sunnyvale, Texas, approving a Chapter 380 incentive agreement with Barak Properties, Inc., authorizing the town manager to execute the agreement and provide an effective date.
Council, you heard the motion made by Finch and resolution number 21-06. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Freeman. Everyone heard the motion? Are there any discussions? All in favor signify. All opposed, motion passed 7-0. Council, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Freeman, second by Mr. Eldridge to adjourn. The time is 8:30. All in favor signify. All opposed. The time is 8:33 and the meeting is adjourned. Charles, I want to say thank you for being here tonight, sir. Appreciate you. Susan,